first signed on to write that book, what were you most nervous about in terms of being able to do your work the way you want while adhering to certain expectations that were already set by a widely beloved animated classic?
All of that. I'm also realizing now I should have called you and been like, Melissa, help! I don't know what I'm doing. First of all, when they reached out, similarly, they reached out to ask if I could write the prequel to the Little Mermaid movie. I thought it was an April Fool's joke. Like, I thought my agent was playing a joke on me. Just because it's the first Little Mermaid where Ariel looks like me. And so to have the opportunity to write the prequel to that story was just historic, and I was just blown away that they thought I could do it. So I signed on, I said okay, and then at that point it was literally the pressure of, I am writing a story to describe, so Against the Tide is Ariel's life before she breaks the surface of the water. So it's what led to creating the Ariel who wanted to collect things and wanted to break the surface of the water, who was so excited to rescue Eric. Like, how did that person come to be? And so I got to decide that, and it was so much pressure because at the end of the day, like, the cool thing about art in movies and books is that we sort of, as the consumer of that art, like, we sort of own that art. How we interpret it and what it means to us is very personal. And so I felt this pressure, and like, I'm deciding what Ariel's life is gonna be like. Like, who am I to decide that? But eventually I was like, the deadline is
been chosen.
I've been chosen. Oh my gosh, the deadline is looming. My editor is incredible. Fun fact, I'd never met my editor in person until tonight, or today. I ran into her outside actually. So, but the deadline was looming, so I just, one foot in front of the other. It just was so much pressure. I was really afraid to get her personality wrong. Like, I wanted to make Ariel pretty sassy, and I was afraid that I get pushback, like that doesn't sound like her. But I'm like, it's been like how many years since the first one came out? Like, surely 2023 Ariel can have some sass. So I went there, and they were pretty forgiving. They let me do kind of like what you're saying, like, this can't happen, this thing can't talk, but they gave me creative liberty, a lot of creative liberty.
I'm gonna shout out something you didn't reference just now, because one of my favorite things ever is a lot of people who, even if they love the movie, they walked away saying one particular thing over and over. I wish the movie had more of her sisters. Your book tells their story also, and I just absolutely love that quality. So if I include that and the millions of other things you have to do in this book, what like extension did you have to add that like came most naturally to you, where you saw it and you're like, yeah, I know exactly how to expand that? But then on the other hand, what was something where, you know, like maybe you felt a little creatively boxed in and you really had to sit and think about the way to break out of that box?
So I think the most boxed in piece was Ariel, because I felt like I needed to write the Ariel that we all know. She needed to sound like Ariel, she needed to think like Ariel. But I'm also like, it's 2023, girl. You sound a little bit different these days, don't you? And so it was like, how do I modernize her? I did have access to the movie script, so I was able to see.
I was gonna ask that.
Yes, they did give me, because they wanted me to see how the film was different, so that I could write into it. And so I think that helped. But that was probably the hardest part, is making Ariel feel like Ariel. There were points where my editor was like, Ariel is really inquisitive. Can she ask more questions here? And I realized in that moment I was holding back because I was afraid to really step in and like be Ariel and like think for Ariel. But then the coolest part was probably kind of like you were saying, Melissa, as writers, as fantasy writers, we like to make up our own stories from our imagination. And so one of the things that I got to create is like where these sisters reside, because they don't all, in Against the Tide, they don't all live in Atlantica at the palace. They all have their own territories. And so I got to create several different oceans that have their own sort of geography. Like one of them, Karina is from this particular ocean where the seaweed is made of icicle, and the water has like snow on top, and so her hair is like very white, and she has this cool like magical ability that deals with being in cold temperatures. So I got to like make up the wildest things about these different places the sisters were from and make them all unique. And that was very freeing, because I was like, it's a blank slate, and I do well with a blank slate.